Hello friends, let us now discuss today another important topic of Indian Constitution, that is the nature of the Constitution of India. It has always been a subject of debate that what is the true nature of the Constitution of India? Is it a federal constitution or a unitary constitution, or even a combination of both? But before we draw any logical conclusion as to the nature of our constitution, it is necessary for us to examine the presence of the federal features and unitary features in our constitution. Then only we will be able to conclude as to what is the true nature of Indian Constitution. So, first we are going to now consider the federal principles and their presence in our Indian Constitution. If a constitution claims it to be federal, then 5 essential principles have to be there. Number 1, a dual set of government. Dual set of government implies 2 levels of government, one at the center and the other at the state level. Now, we undoubtedly have in our constitution this dual set of government. We have our central government and state governments at regional level or at the state level. Now comes the second point of federalism, that is distribution of powers. The purpose of having dual set of government is this, so that we can distribute various types of powers between the center and the states. What types of powers are distributed? 3 various types of powers are distributed, namely legislative powers, administrative powers and financial powers. Articles 245 to 255 deal with the distribution of legislative powers. Articles 256 to 263 deal with the division of administrative powers, and Article 264 to Article 291 deal with the distribution of financial powers. Now, interestingly, in a federal constitution or in a federal system, the states are not subordinate to the center. Rather, the states are independent in their own spheres and they are coordinate to one another. Now, we are coming to the third federal principle, that is written and rigid constitution. In practice, all the federal constitutions have been found to be written, because the foundations of a federal constitution are complicated contracts, and until and unless these complicated contracts or the terms of the complicated contracts are reduced into writing, it is practically going to create uncertainty, confusion and conflict. So, the terms were written down and we have a written constitution. Now comes the rigidity. Rigidity means, as a federal constitution provides for distribution of important powers between center and states, it has to be rigid as well. That means amending process or the process of making changes to the constitution should not be an easy task and should not be also done by the center alone. It would be rigid if it involves, if the amendment process involves the participation of states as well, because if it is not so, the center by amending the constitution can take away the powers of states. Now, whether this principle is present in our constitution or not, yes, our constitution is not, the amending process is not strictly rigid, rather we have a blend of rigidity and flexibility. Under Article 368, we know that there are a few articles which can be amended by simple majority, and majority of the articles, they require for the purpose of their amendment a special majority. There are some articles which require ratification by half of Indian states. This is how we have a complicated or a rigid process of amending the constitution. Now comes the fourth federal feature, that is supremacy of the constitution. A federal constitution necessarily has to be supreme. That means no authority in the country or in the system shall have the power to violate or infringe any of the constitutional provisions. The constitution is supreme, be it legislative, executive or judicial, whether it belongs to the nation or to any individual state. It is subordinate to and controlled by the constitution. This is what supremacy of the constitution presupposes. In our constitution also, we have many articles upholding this supremacy of the constitution. We have article 13 clause 2, we have article 32, article 226, article 13 clause 2 deserves a special mention over here. It says that the state shall not make any law which takes away or abridges any of our fundamental rights, and if any law is made in contravention of this provision, then the law so made up to the extent of contravention shall be unconstitutional and void. You know, articles 32 and 226 speak of or provide for various types of writ. It is not possible to discuss in detail over here. Moving on to our next federal principle, that is independent judiciary. Yes, as the federal policy provides for distribution of powers between center and states, there may be a situation when there may be conflict between center and states as to these relations. Then there has to be an impartial or independent judiciary to resolve the dispute. Independence of judiciary implies neither it is under the control of central government nor under the control of any state government. And article 50 categorically says that judiciary should be kept separate from the executive. So these federal principles are dominantly present in our constitution, but along with these federal principles, we have certain unitary features as well present in our constitution. First, appointment of governors under article 155. It is a unitary feature. There are some provisions in the constitution which require the governor to send certain state laws for the presidential assent, and president has the power to veto such state laws. The articles which provide for such presidential assent are article 200 and article 288 clause 2. Though in practice there are not many examples of such a situation where president has vetoed some state law, though we have an example in our hand right now, that is Re-Kerala Education Bill, AIR 1958 SC 956. Even in this matter also, the center obtained the advisory opinion of the Supreme Court under article 143 before sending the bill back to the state legislature for suitable amendments in the light of observation of or opinion of the Supreme Court. Now comes the second unitary feature, that is article 249. Under article 249, if the Rajya Sabha passes a resolution by 2/3 majority providing that it has become expedient in national interest to make a law on any subject from the state list by the parliament, then it becomes lawful for the parliament to pass a law or to enact a law on any subject from the state list, provided the resolution is in force. Such a resolution passed by Rajya Sabha normally remains in force for 1 year from the date of its passing. Now comes the third unitary principle: creation of new state or alteration of the boundaries of existing states under Article 2(3). This power is exclusively given to the center. This is also a unitary feature. Another important unitary feature is the emergency provisions. This is unitary feature number 4. Now, we know that emergency can be of 3 types: national emergency under Article 352, state emergency under Article 356, and financial emergency under Article 360. During this emergency proclaimed under Article 352, the normal federal relation or the normal federal system undergoes vital changes. During proclamation of emergency under Article 250, Parliament becomes empowered to legislate on any subject from the state list. During the proclamation of emergency, center can give direction to the state as to the manner in which the executive powers of the state have to be exercised. Under Article 356, which speaks of state emergency, if the president is satisfied that government of a state cannot be carried on in accordance with the constitution, then he can dismiss the state ministry, he can dissolve the state legislature, and he can assume all the functions of the state. So, these are some unitary features. Now, after considering both the federal features and unitary features, we can very rightly conclude that our constitution is a combination of both. And in this concluding part, we are going to analyze some observations made by jurists and some observations made by Honorable Supreme Court of India. So, simply as both the federal and unitary features are dominantly present in our constitution, so it can be said to be a combination of both. Professor K.C. Ware said that it is a quasi-federal constitution. It is a unitary state with subsidiary federal features rather than a federal state with subsidiary unitary features. Reference is his work, India's New Constitution Analyzed, Professor K.C. Ware, 1950, ALJ 22. Sir Ivor Jennings also said that it is a federation with a strong centralizing tendency. Reference is Ivor Jennings, some characteristics of the Constitution of India, page number 1. Now, some observations made by the Honorable Supreme Court. In state of Rajasthan versus Union of India, AIR 1977 SC 1361, Supreme Court characterized the Constitution to be more unitary than federal. In a recent case of Kuldeep Nair versus Union of India, AIR 2006 SC 3127, Supreme Court said that the federal principle is a basic feature of our constitution. However, the federation leans in favor of a strong center. To sum up, we will conclude with an observation made by Dr. V.R. Ambedkar sir in the Constituent Assembly debates. He said that Indian Constitution is federal inasmuch as it establishes a system what may be called a dual polity. In his opinion, Indian Constitution is both federal as well as unitary according to the requirements of time and circumstances. He said that for normal times it works like a federal constitution, and in times of war it is designed to work as a unitary constitution. Reference Constituent Assembly Debates, volume 7, page number 3435. So, in this session we have tried to analyze the nature of Indian Constitution. We have tried to briefly analyze the presence of federal features or federal principles in our constitution, and also the presence of unitary principles in our constitution. And we may rightly conclude by saying, considering the observations made by jurists and Honorable Supreme Court of India, that it is a combination of both. Thank you for watching.